So we've got a new month and new project, and I thought this time I would go through watercolours and really focusing on the very basic techniques, which I've not taught for quite a long time. So some of you won't have seen me do this, you may have come across this with other people. Is it too hard? Have you turned it down? Yeah, no, we turn it down. Sure, we'll turn it down. Have you done it?
Tried to.
I'll do it in a minute. Remind me in a minute. I'll do it. So I've got a few very basic exercises if you want to have a go at these. It's a project that's entirely optional, so if you want to stick with whatever else you were doing, oils, acrylics, that's absolutely fine. I've been practicing this for quite a few nights because I find it very, very difficult. I think watercolours for me is definitely the most difficult medium. The sort of things I do, things like this, I tend to do little sketches in my sketchbook when I'm out and about, and for me it's a nice medium because it's so portable. But I think I very, very rarely do anything that I would frame or sell or finish really. But it's a nice sketching medium for me, so you know it's nice and easy to move around. And what I usually do is just take a bit of paper out like that and just pop it in this folder, and that way I can sketch when I'm out and about. So I thought I'd just talk a bit about the materials and then just demonstrate some very simple exercises really that I think will benefit anybody who's not feeling that confident with watercolours. It certainly benefited me. Right, so materials wise, so what you need to paint onto is, I definitely would strongly suggest watercolour paper. So I've got this size paper for sale at 40p a sheet if anybody needs any watercolour paper. So I've got loads of that. Watercolour paper tends to be a little bit thicker than drawing paper, and as you can see it's a little bit more getting towards cardboard thickness, and it's got a bit of some of it's got a bit of a texture. So this one is a medium texture, and these are the most common kinds of paper that are used. You can get a rougher texture, which I think is quite nice. You get very smooth paper, which is nice for very detailed little studies, but it's not very easy to paint bigger paintings on. So I think the medium texture is quite nice. Watercolour paper also has a layer of sort of glue size, so which helps the washes just sit nicely on the paper. So rather than soaking into the paper, it will just sit nicely on the surface. So that's the features of watercolour paper. So that's that. The actual paints themselves, you can get them either in these little pans like this, which somebody might have, or you can buy them in tubes. And I much prefer the tubes. I think the tubes are far easier to use. You can, the pans are fine perhaps for a little bit of sketching on a small scale, or if you just want a tiny bit of red or yellow. But if you want bigger areas, bigger washes, the tubes are much easier. If you can afford artist quality paints, that's all to the good, and they're much stronger pigments, much smaller tubes, but you'll get much stronger colours with the artist quality. These are student quality, and these are a really good place to start. So when I do my demos, they're pretty much always student quality, although I do have some of the artist quality colours as well.
What make are they?
So these are, this one's Winsor & Newton, Cotman, and this one's De La Reine Aquafine. So if you're getting they're good quality, student quality paints. These manufacturers also probably do a more basic range, which I wouldn't go near, because there isn't much colour in them. There's a lot of fillers and not much pigment. So if you're getting these sort of like mid-range paints, places like the Works and the Range, and or maybe not the Range, but certainly the Works and some of the supermarkets, they do their own watercolours, which aren't really great. There's not that much pigment in them. The colours aren't necessarily the kind of colours you want. So these are a good place to start. And what I would suggest is just, if you fancy trying watercolours, just get 1 or 2 colours. Just maybe a brown and a blue. That would be absolutely fine to start with. Or a black or a grey or something like that. You don't need masses, but these are probably a couple of quid each. So that's the paint. Something to mix it on. This sort of palette is the one I'm using for teaching with. And this is quite nice because I can squeeze out the paints here and mix them here. And I've also got, this is the one that I tend to use for myself when I go outside. It's a bit older and it's actually a little bit smaller. It's a bit easier to work with, you know, if I'm working, say, in a pub or something like that, where there isn't that much room. So it's a little bit of a smaller box. So that looks nice for me. You can also get these sort of pallets. So this is probably quite an inexpensive pallet. I think I paid at the time probably £3 or £4. It's probably gone up a bit since. I think my son had this for a long time, then he gave it me back when he finished with it. But these are nice because you've got room to put the paints and then plenty of big areas with nice scooped out well areas. So you can mix lots of paint here. Nice big mixing areas. The flat palettes aren't great for watercolours. So really like the paper palettes that we use for acrylics and oils, they're not really ideal for watercolours. These are better, or if you haven't got a palette, just something like a saucer or an old plate or something like that works well. So that's good for palettes. Brushes, you can get some nice quality brushes. Like this is a roundy brush, so that's probably, I would imagine £8 or £10, something like that. So that's quite a nice brush. These are much cheaper brushes. These came in a set from Lidl's that I bought just so we got a few brushes in class in case anybody wanted to use one. You can get some really nice quality sable brushes, and they are very, very expensive. Get up into the hundreds with those. But these are nylon brushes. The other brush I've got here, this is a natural hair brush. I'm not sure quite what it's made of, but it holds a lot of moisture. So the natural hairs tend to hold a bit more moisture. It's a bit floppy, but then that's fine for washes. But if you want a bit more control, these are better for control. Right, so that's paper, colours, palette, paper, I think that's a bit of everything. With the water, it's a good idea to have a couple of pots of water, and you've got one to wash your brushes out with, and then one to dip in for clean water. Otherwise, you'll find that your painting progressively gets darker and darker. So that's quite a good tip. Okay, so these exercises, so the first one is just painting a flat area. And what I've found is I've seen so many people not able to just create a flat area with watercolours. And part of the art of it, I was just trying to find my examples, which I'm not sure where they've gone. So that's the first exercise, and the second exercise is something along these lines. So it's like the idea of like a mountain scene. I've made this a little bit lower, the angle a little bit lower. Maybe next week I'll perhaps just raise it up a little bit. That was the other thing to say, is if you're working with watercolours, ideally have a board to put your work on, like something like that. And then you want an angle, something like that, just a little bit of an angle, so that you don't, it's not ideal to have it dead flat. It's best to just sort of angle it up a little bit. This is a bit too steep, but I can probably manage on that. So to get a flat area, the easiest way would be just to get my big brush and just pop that through there. But if you haven't got a bigger brush, I could probably still get a nice flat area with a brush that size. If you're getting too much smaller, it's going to be quite a challenge. So you want a reasonable sized brush. The first thing is to make sure you've got plenty of paint mixed. So I'll just use this brush to get some water in there. So I've got a good kind of puddle of paint, as it were, and just mix that in. And just add a little bit more colour to that. So what I've used here is a mixture of black and red. It doesn't really matter what colours. You could experiment with different colours if you want. And then what I'll do is just really load the brush, and then just starting at the top, I just want that really, to mix that in a bit more. I'm going to get a nice flat wash. So I'm just going to work kind of backwards and forwards. And the idea is to keep that nice and fluid, keep that really wet, so that it just holds a certain amount of colour as it goes through. And as soon as it starts to dry, I need to reload my brush. So you want to get this little bead of paint at the bottom there, and that will keep that bottom edge nice and wet, while that'll stop that drying out as you're working your way down. And you're just bringing that down each time. And then I can just reload my brush. It's not supposed to do that, and that's why you don't have such a steep angle. A nice gentle angle so that you don't lose your. But you can see that's going on quite nicely. I'm getting a reason. It's not perfectly flat. It probably would be flatter with if I use the flat brush, but that's fairly reasonable. That's quite nice. What you might find then is you'll have like this bead of paint at the bottom here, and if you've got that, if you've got a little bit more paint than you need, just try and dry your brush off. I use a bit of rag, but if you've got a kitchen roll, and just lift that out. Otherwise, what you'll find is that the water will run back, and the pigment will stay put, and you get these sort of like, they call it cauliflower marks or run back marks. If you want to go for a flat wash, that would be the way to go. And then what we could do then is maybe have a go at this exercise. I've used this photograph, and this was actually another mountain range photograph I found on the internet, but it doesn't really have to be particularly accurate. Just do some sort of imaginary mountain. And the idea is to have lots of tonal increments to sort of have it progressively darker. So, I mean, one idea would be to let that dry, and then I could draw that on there, and then just add another wash on the top of that, and then again go darker. But with this one, what I've done is actually just made the wash a little bit darker each time. So whichever way you want to go, I'll just do a little bit more here. So if I started with this bit, the sky, I just want to go even lighter than what I've got. So I'll just lighten up what I've got here. So a bit more water in there. And then just work the first section, just as I've done with this one. Having plenty of paint mixed and creating a bead down to this level. And then any excess, I'll let that dry. And you'll find it'll take a few minutes for that layer to dry. So you've got either a choice of getting the hairdryer out and using the hairdryer, and then you could then go into the next section, or just start another one, have a couple on the go, just try a couple of exercises. So when I was practicing these, I practiced these over the last few evenings. I just went from one picture to another and just did lots of these little tiny pictures. And this is quite a nice scale to work at. It's not too enormous, it's quite manageable. So if you've got a big sheet, just divide it up. And what I did was I found these old photo mounts, and I just drew in the little rectangles, and then that gives me a rectangle to work in. And just took it from there. So yeah, a couple of exercises to get going. From there, another exercise would be to perhaps do a wash where you got it a little bit stronger here and then progressively get it lighter. But I think maybe we'll start with this and then perhaps do a little bit more of that next week. So yeah, if anybody fancies doing any of those, I've got quite a few of these photos here, or if anybody needs to borrow materials, or you don't have to spend the whole session doing this. If you just fancy going to this and then go back to your normal project or another project.
So would you say that, from the perspective there, it's lighter at the back, further away,
Yeah.
and darker as you come forward?
Yeah, that's it. It's the idea of sort of aerial, what they call aerial perspective. So this photo I got from the. It used to be like the screensaver that came with the first computer I had, and it's just really like trees, on the hills, and then atmospheric perspective. Things appear a bit lighter and bluer as they go back. But I just thought it's quite a nice image for this sort of thing, really, for this sort of exercise. So it's an exercise, but it makes a little picture out there. So I've got on two of those that we could do. This would be another one we could do for the next exercise. So this was, that's a photo I took in Scotland many years ago, just mist and mountains. But again, it's a similar sort of thing, flat areas, but then some areas are slightly lighter. So that's the next stage. But I thought maybe do have a go at this first, if you want to have a go at that, and then that's the next one. Okay.